A trigger can be defined as stimuli or cues that remind a young person of their trauma. They can be obvious or subtle, and sometimes detective work is required to work out what these are. It can be helpful to keep an intrusions or triggers diary each week, which can then be discussed in more detail in sessions. Typically, young people with PTSD are avoidant of triggers as they experience intrusions, physiological sensations, strong emotions, or flashbacks when they're around them. In this session, the therapist helps Karim to understand what a trigger is, why memories get triggered, to identify a trigger, and to practice exposure to a trigger while using stimulus discrimination, also known as the then versus now technique.
So it sounds like since last week you've been having a few less intrusions. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. I mean, that just shows how hard you've been working.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I still have some, but not as many.
Okay. It's frustrating to still have them, but it's totally normal at this stage. We kind of expect that. Okay. Shall we have a bit of a think today about when you are having those intrusions and what to do if you're being triggered?
Okay.
Okay. If we just think about last week, so the last week since I've last seen you, do you know how many times you've been triggered? Did you do that intrusions diary?
Yeah, probably about once or twice a day.
Okay. All right. So maybe let's just think about the last time that you were triggered. Can you tell me where you were, what you were doing?
Yeah, it was yesterday. I was helping my aunt with shopping. I don't usually, but it was a big shop. We were at the supermarket and I just suddenly froze and just panicked.
Okay. Were memories popping in at that
Yeah.
point? Okay. That sounds really upsetting. How long did that last for?
Not too long. When I got home, I was fine. I just felt weird. I don't know what came over me.
Okay. It sounds like two things are happening, so just correct me if I'm wrong. But the first sounds like when you're out and about, suddenly you might be triggered, have the memories flooding in, and have those kind of intense feelings that come with it.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if also maybe there's a little bit of being a bit hard on yourself, maybe a bit critical about the fact that you're being triggered.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's really important for me to tell you that it's actually really common to still be being triggered, even though we've done a lot of the memory work. It's actually all because of the way in which trauma memories are stored. They're much more easily triggered than a normal memory. Okay. Now, I would say pretty much every young person I work with, once they've done that memory work and we're getting to work on triggers, they're being triggered still. Okay. So it's no indication that you're doing anything wrong or it's not working. This is normal.
Okay.
All right. And you've actually done the first step of triggers work because it sounds like you know situations in which you're being triggered, like when you're in the supermarket. And what we're going to do now is the second step of thinking, well, what are the actual triggers that are triggering me? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we know about triggers is they tend to be pretty harmless, sometimes really subtle, everyday things. They become triggering because they're around at the time of the trauma or they're reminders of the trauma. Okay?
Yeah.
And what we need to work to do is to break the link between a harmless trigger and the trauma memory.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So just sort of, maybe we could just start to think a bit more about this last time you were triggered.
Okay.
Okay. Talk me through what happened up until the point of feeling triggered.
Well, I was in the supermarket, just on the aisles, looking for stuff to get. I was behind my aunt, pushing the trolley, and just suddenly I just became overwhelmed with the memories.
Okay, so before that sudden becoming overwhelmed, did you notice anything, any people, any objects?
Not really that I can remember.
Okay, so just talk me through what happened next.
Well, I was scared and I didn't know what to do.
Okay. So thinking specifically, just before you became really scared and overwhelmed, did you see anything, notice anything? Think about those senses, what you could see, hear, smell.
I think I saw alcohol, maybe the beer bottles that Al got.
Okay, well done. Do you think that could be the trigger?
Yeah,
Was that what you saw just before you became really, really scared and overwhelmed?
yeah,
I mean, that would make sense because the bottle was there at the time of the trauma, right?
yeah.
Okay, well done. We've identified a trigger.
Good.
Are you okay to carry on?
I think so.
Okay, well done. So now we know that the bottle is a trigger. We need to break the link between that harmless bottle and the upsetting trauma memory.
Okay.
Now we do that with a technique called then versus now.
Okay.
Sometimes people call it stimulus discrimination, but that sounds a bit serious, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Should we call it then versus now?
Sure.
Okay. So what then versus now means is I'm going to ask you to look at a trigger, to notice the details in it, to let any memories come to mind, which we know you can do because you've done really well letting memories come to mind already, to notice how you feel. And then I'm going to ask you to really focus on all the differences that you know between then, the time of the trauma, and now, the here and now.
Okay.
Okay, so that will make more sense as we go through. We don't need to go back to the supermarket to do this. I thought just to begin with, we can look at a picture of a bottle
Okay.
on the laptop. Is that all right?
That's fine.
Now, why do you think I'm asking you to do this?
So I don't get scared every time I see the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to break that link. And it's kind of similar to how you were able to talk about the trauma when we did the memory work. Okay.
Yeah.
If we get you to be able to look at and be around triggers, they should become less upsetting for you.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm not going to get it up yet, but imagine that we've got a picture of a bottle on the screen now. So Al's favourite beer.
Mm-hmm.
What would be different between looking at it now and when you saw it then at the time of the trauma?
How now I'm in a therapy session.
Yeah. Did you even know me at the time of the trauma?
No.
Okay.
You're here now. I'm not at home. Al's not around.
Absolutely. What's anything different in terms of other senses, like what you can smell, what you can hear?
I can't smell the bottle. I could smell the alcohol then. Yeah.
Any differences between things like time of year, time of day?
Well, it's not the evening. It's not late. It's not dark. Yeah.
Okay, well done. And we know this is just a picture, whereas the last time you saw it, it was really there in front of you.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just wondering, how anxious are you feeling now out of 10 about looking at the picture?
7.
Okay. So just as before, we need to be anxious, otherwise it wouldn't be a trauma trigger,
Yeah.
would it? Okay. So I'm going to get the picture up now.
Okay.
How long shall we spend looking at the bottle, just to begin with? What would feel okay?
I don't know.
Should we try 30 seconds to begin with?
Okay.
Okay. So I'm just going to get a picture up,
Sure.
and I'd like you to just let the memories come to mind, allow them to be there, notice how you're feeling, and then I'll prompt you to bring in everything you know that's different between then and now.
Okay.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, well done. Here we go. So here we can see a bottle of beer. Just notice it, focus on it. Look at the details. If that memory's come in, allow it to be there. Notice how you're feeling. And start to bring to mind all of those differences between then and now. You can say them out loud if you want, or even act them out, because that can be quite powerful to do. Tell me some of the differences between then and now as you look at the bottle.
I can't smell the bottle. No one's drinking it.
Mhm.
I can't see Al.
Mhm.
It's not night. You're here.
Mhm. You're doing really well.
I'm calmer.
Well done.
The therapist and young person can work together to build a list of triggers that have been identified. It is then possible to work through this list of triggers as an exposure hierarchy, exposing the young person to each trigger while practicing the then versus now technique. Exposure and stimulus discrimination tasks can be practiced in sessions and between sessions. It is important to repeat exposure until the young person feels less uneasy around triggers or until they are less concerned about what might happen if they are triggered in future. Tracking their anxiety rating and asking them what they think will happen during the exposure can be helpful for monitoring this. It is, of course, not possible or ethical to expose young people to practice facing all of their triggers. For example, going back to a faraway location or seeing a perpetrator of an assault. Remember, in triggers stimulus discrimination work, the aim is not to re-expose the young person to the exact trauma itself, but to support them to be more comfortable around reminders of what happened. It can be helpful for some young people to complete a triggers and then versus now diary in between sessions, logging where they were, what they were doing, what memory was being triggered, and differences between then, the time of the trauma, and now, the time of the intrusion, into a table. This is sometimes more powerful than just thinking about then versus now differences. Encourage young people to be as creative as possible, highlighting differences in people present, the place, time of day or year, sounds, smells, or tastes, sights, or feelings and physical sensations in their body. Completing a site visit, returning to the place that a trauma took place, can be a helpful final triggers exposure task for some young people, in which then versus now can also be practiced. If it's not possible to complete a site visit in person, it can be done online using Google Maps and Street View,